Today is the anniversary of the worst natural disaster in U.S. history. We're going to talk about it. We're also going to talk about this, and this, and yeah, even this. We've got hurricanes, watch out Hawaii, and rumors of hurricanes, watch out East Coast. We're going to get into every single bit of it, including a wild end of the week forecast for the lower 48. But we're going to start right here, right now, in the tropics. Hi everyone, welcome into the channel. My name is Jason. I've been tracking weather for a long time. I've spent most of the morning looking at all of the latest data that concerns the tropics and the weather of the lower 48 over the next couple of days. We're going to take a look at all of that. I've got a lot to get into, a full show. We're going to start in a strange place, and that's out here in the Central Pacific. Why? Because this is Hurricane Kiko, a major Category 4 hurricane that is barreling down toward Hawaii and will be in the vicinity in the next 7 days or so, folks. Look at this very strong system. You can see the eye. A lot of the deep convection is really over here on the eastern flank, but it is still a very, very powerful system. Nonetheless, headed straight toward Hawaii. Maybe looks to graze it to the north, but in any event, Hawaii is well within the margin of error here. If this cone were to extend out a couple of more days, you would see Hawaii in that cone. And we're going to watch this because you guys could have some very rough weather. It looks to weaken as it gets on in toward Hawaii as cooler waters are up there, but we're going to watch it very, very closely. Definitely bring some rough weather to you all. Back in our side of the world here, at least where cold rain lives, here in the Atlantic, we've got a tropical wave. There it is. Big red, code red area with now an 80% chance of development. Conditions are fairly conducive over the next several days. We've got some dry air, a little bit of wind shear out here. Waters are a little bit cooler here in this part of the Atlantic, but this thing looks to continue to develop. Almost every model develops it in some fashion, at least gets it into a depression or a weak tropical storm phase. But we're looking to have this thing become a tropical cyclone over the next 7 days. Very high percentage chance of that. I've got all the details crawling across the screen so you can read that text if you want to. Look at this. This is the trend GIF for the last 4 runs of the European model. And what do we see here? Nothing, very little activity until the very latest run, and it puts a fairly strong hurricane down here in the Bahamas. The European model has consistently taken this system that would become Gabrielle on the low road down into or around the Antilles and then moving it westward and northwestward from there. The latest run is quite scary looking as it puts it here in the Bahamas. We get on out into the latter portion. We start to get in the latter portion of September. This will be September the 17th. So it's not the only model that's doing this either. And we're going to take a look at some of that here in just a minute. But I wanted to show you that just so you can see that instead of a weak little system now, the European is actually starting to strengthen this out as we go out in time. Here is the system right down here in the tropical Atlantic. You see the little wave action coming across right here. That's the one we're watching. A lot of convection firing in the convergence zone down here in our MDR, but this is what we're watching as it tracks this way. Got some other activity out here, stalled frontal boundary. We've been watching that. We'll continue to watch that over the next several days. Watch the Gulf and off the southeast coast for homegrown activities. We're going out in time. That's what's going on out in the tropics, folks. Currently, here's the GFS model, the latest GFS run. Look at this. So we've rolled this out to basically Monday evening. This is Monday the 9th. And we're going to roll this forward. Look what the GFS does. Instead of carrying it way up here like it had been doing, it's now trending a little bit more toward the Euro and keeping it just north of the islands, then getting it out here toward the Bahamas way out here on September the 15th. So this is, just around day 11 or so. Look what it does. It scrapes the Bahamas, turns up toward North Carolina, and then hooks in right around Myrtle Beach as a very strong hurricane, folks. That would be a major hurricane strike southeast coast. Now, this is an operational model run. I do not want you to panic about this. This is not a forecast, but the GFS is showing some signals in its evolution of the upper air features that would lead me to believe there's some credibility to this. Talked about this on the show, blocking up in Canada. We're going to certainly watch that. It's got another system behind it. What is the European doing? Well, the European had been keeping this very low, very weak. Well, here it goes, same time frame, Monday evening and then out into Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, September the 11th, takes it right into the Antilles as a potential Category 1 hurricane, folks. So you need to pay attention, really start to think about what you might do if this thing continues to take that track. If you're up here in the northern islands, St. John's, up in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, places in the DR, watch this thing as it goes on through. It scrapes Puerto Rico and then makes its way toward the Bahamas as we get on out toward day 12, day 13, Tuesday, September the 16th. And then it takes it straight toward Florida and then immediately hooks it up toward the southeast and stops right there. That's the end of the run. That's 2 weeks out. So we've got 10 days before it gets in the vicinity of the islands, maybe 8 to 10 days to get into the vicinity of the islands. And then beyond that, several more days before it makes it into where it would be in proximity across or toward the United States. Okay, so we've got a long time to watch this. These are 2 operational model runs. The ensembles are a little bit different in terms of what they do with it. And I'll show you those so we have all of the data and have the full picture. Here's what the GFS is showing. I've rolled this all the way out. This is why the GFS brings this into land. Look at this. I want to show you a couple of features. Got a blocking ridge up here in Canada. You see that? We've talked about this before. This would allow the steering to kind of go this way in that direction, right? We've got a little low pressure, upper level low trough that's going to be moving in this direction as we roll the footage forward. And here is another upper level low off or over the southeast. This feature here, if this is true, this is going to act to pull or slingshot this back into the coast like that. It's kind of a Fujiwara effect kind of thing. We'll see if that's end up being true. But as we pull this on forward, look what happens. You got this upper level low feature kind of moving in and then another blocking ridge going across here. So as we go on out in time, the timing of these features, if there is a tropical system in this red area here, okay, in that little pink area, if there's a tropical cyclone there, we're going to have to pay critical attention to all of the things that are going on up here in Canada. There are plenty of short waves moving through, there are ridge signals moving through as well, and the timing of those will matter in terms of an East Coast strike. May not get down to that. Maybe it'll recurve sooner than that, but we're seeing a few more solutions bringing it farther west, kind of like what we saw with Aaron. So we need to pay attention. Here is the European Ensemble suite, and you can see most of the members, there are a few that take it in toward the islands like this. Most of them curve it out. See all of these L's right in here? They curve it on out, and we have a few ensemble members picking up on the next wave, and a couple do something here in the Gulf too. So you have to watch all of those areas now over the next couple of weeks. We're going to start to see things wake up. The GFS looks a whole lot more chaotic. The GFS ensembles, that is. A lot of the members develop L's and little tropical cyclones, but they take them mostly out here into the Atlantic. These L's that you see off the coast here are associated with the frontal boundary, and then a few in the Gulf, and then they're pretty enthusiastic about the next wave coming off too. So a lot of waves coming off Africa. We're in peak hurricane season time. Business is picking up. You got to pay attention if you live in the islands, the DR, the Bahamas, down here in Central America, into the Gulf, the Southeast states. We're going to have to watch things over the next couple of days. I'm certainly not forecasting a hurricane strike, but it's definitely something that I'm becoming a little more concerned about as we go on out of time, as we get more and more data in. Sea surface temperatures are in the mid to upper 80s, depending on where we are in here, upper 80s to close to 90 parts of the Gulf and the Caribbean. You can see the wake of Aaron right here, so some of the water temperatures have cooled off, and so that would be a little less fuel for the fire, so to speak. This is the ocean heat content. We sometimes show this, but the depth of the water matters too. You get a little bit of a disturbed area of weather moving over the surface water. If it's very shallow, it'll cool it off, but when you have water underneath that's very warm, it'll replenish that, provide plenty of fuel content, and that's what we see way out here where these yellows and oranges and reds are. We see plenty of ocean heat content for tropical cyclones to make use of if they get into this area. And then way on down the line here, as we get way on out toward the end of the 2-week period, a lot of these aren't, see the MDR, here's our MDR, you can make this out kind of over, I'm drawing a little too far to the north, but you see these reds and oranges in the MDR, that's sinking motion. Tropical cyclones don't like that. As we move on out in time, look what happens as we get on out toward the second half of September. That's replaced in some ways by greens and even some whites here. So whites are kind of neutral. Greens will be rising motion much more favorable than the sinking motion that we've had out here in the Atlantic. So conditions could become more favorable even for increased tropical activity as we get on in toward the second half of September. September and move into October. And we all know that you can have plenty of tropical cyclone activity during those times of the year. The second peak is toward mid-October, so we get a secondary peak in that time, kind of calendar area on the calendar is what I'm trying to say. So that's what we've got in the tropics, folks. We've got some other weather that we need to talk about here in the lower 48. Got your weather IQ coming straight ahead, but we're going to get into this weekend's forecast next. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, folks, please consider doing so by hitting the subscribe button below if you like what you're seeing, and also give the content a like, leave a comment. If there's anything I can pray about, please put it in the comment section. It gives me and others the chance to pray over whatever you need, folks. We want to be here to lift you up and support you. That's the most important thing to me, and certainly appreciate you stopping by for the forecast, but certainly stay for the community. We can talk in the comment section. Let whatever you put in there, I'm going to read it and I'll respond to it as well. So hit the bell too, you get notified whenever I put out a new video. And with that, we're going to go on ahead here and take a look at the weather IQ question and see if you know the answer to this. We've talked about weather maps the last couple of days, and this is going to be the same topic today. Here it is. What is the term for the lines which connect points of equal temperature on a weather map? Isohypses, isometrics, isotoners, or isotherms? You know the answer, type it in the comment section. If you don't know it, simply hang out to the end of the show. You're going to know about that and a few other interesting things along the way. I've got a cool crawler that's going to talk about this day in weather history, and it'll be something that you need to know, folks. I've got a couple other historical tidbits as well to share, but right now I'm going to share the forecast for the end of the week and the weekend. Friends, I know hurricane season brings a lot of anxiety, particularly if you've been through a hurricane before, like some of you have, or if you live along the coast or in the islands. But just remember, we're 8 to 10 days out from this thing even getting toward the islands. We've got a long time to figure this out. No model knows what the upper air features are going to exactly be like 10 days out, much less 2 weeks out. And they don't understand the strength of the storm that far out either. What we need to do now is look for clues and not panic and not get too worried. We're going to watch it over the next couple of days. I will keep you posted, and I'll tell you anything that I see that is concerning, like trends. That's what we're looking for, trends and agreement between models and ensembles. And right now we're kind of all over the place with that stuff. So just don't panic about it yet. I'll keep you posted. If there's anything that changes during the day, I'll post it on X at Real Cold Rain. You can follow me there. In the meantime, let's take a look at the forecast for the rest of the week. You can see the tropical connection down here in the southwest. There's Lorena down here sending a few spokes of energy up through the southwest into Mexico, and that connects all the way back up toward the northwest. We're seeing some clouds out there, some fog and things like that, some smoke out here, it looks like, in the plains, as well as some cloud cover extending back from that frontal boundary as we move through the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley, and then a secondary push coming down here from Canada, and some thunderstorms across Florida. We're seeing some rain around here in the Ohio Valley too, even close to where cold rain lives in the southern Appalachians. Here is, I'll try not to bounce around too much. We've got a little bit of bouncing to do here. Frost advisories exiting stage right this morning. Going to see more of those probably over the next couple of days as cool air works in out of Canada. Maybe even see some freeze warnings too. So if you've got tender vegetation up there, start to look at that, pay attention. A lot of wind expected this afternoon. Gusty in the Dakotas, even a high wind warning up here, and some fog alerts, some air quality alerts, along with some heat advisories and extreme heat warnings up here in the northwest for another day or so. We've got a lot of wildfire smoke up here infiltrating Washington as well, and then some flood watches up here in the desert southwest for training of thunderstorms this afternoon. Could drop some heavy rainfall rates. There's your air quality smoke across much of central Washington state, a little bit in Oregon, and down in the San Joaquin Valley through Fresno toward Los Angeles, Salt Lake City, Dallas, and Houston. Very stagnant out there. Going to be a lot of haze in the air, and certainly could have some air quality issues. So if you're sensitive to that, just be aware of it. So if we take a look here on our tropical tidbits map, we're looking at the upper air flow, give you an idea of what's coming over the next several days. Got our big low pressure up here in north of the lakes, our upper level low, bringing in cool weather there. Big baking hot ridge over here in western Canada, just sending that cool air down toward its east. And look at this, as we go on out through Saturday and Sunday, we finally see that upper low move out and this trough swing east and this ridge swing east, allowing this gyre, this big upper level low off the west coast, our next weather maker there, to come on in and provide you some cool weather and some rain out here. So you're going to need to keep the umbrellas handy in the northwest. That trough sort of dissipates as that ridge moves east into Canada, sets you guys up for some heat up here in Canada. Big ridge over the southwest. We may even see some severe weather into the Rocky Mountains and plains as we get on in toward the middle of next week with that trough along the East Coast. And we'll get an idea as we get on into next week what the flow pattern is going to look like for any potential tropical systems moving into the area. In the meantime, hang on to your hats up here in the Dakotas, folks. Winds gusting into the 50s, possibly even 60s in North Dakota. Going to make it a windy afternoon. Certainly windy in the northeast too, where we could see gusts into the 30s. Outside of that, not too bad. Look at this. I've already ran this forward, but as we get on in toward the weekend, we see that push of dry air coming in. It's going to be hot and muggy Friday and Saturday in the southeast and along much of the East Coast. But look what happens as we get on into Saturday evening and Sunday. That frontal push through, bringing some showers out ahead of it and dry air behind it for much of the Tennessee Valley into the southeast. As we get on into Monday and Tuesday, much of the eastern portion of the country is going to be under the influence of cool weather, high pressure, and drier conditions. Taking a look at today, looking at rainfall, thunderstorms, showers. Keep the umbrellas handy here through the southern Appalachians and interior northeast. Could see some strong thunderstorms with gusty winds, potentially a few severe reports up here. Secondary area of rain coming in with another push out of Canada along that frontal boundary up here in the Midwest, and then tropical rainfall rates out here in the Pacific or in the Four Corners region, the desert Southwest, for some of that Pacific tropical moisture getting into the area, prompting those flood watches. Of course, across Florida, you're seeing that stalled boundary still sit in place today. That'll remain in place tomorrow, provide more showers and thunderstorms, more moisture coming into the Southwest. This could play a pivotal role in how the weather turns out over the course of next week if it can get all the way up in here into the southern tier. That frontal boundary sags a little farther to the south and a little farther to the east as we get on into Friday, and we're looking at rain anywhere from the northeast back through the southern Appalachians into the southern plains with some strong thunderstorms potentially going to be rumbling through the Missouri, Arkansas into the Tennessee Valley areas tomorrow, so watch out for that. As we get on out into Saturday, the highest probabilities of precipitation along that slow-moving front up here in the northeast could see a tenth to as much as a half an inch of rain in spots along there down to the southern Appalachians, into the southern plains, back into the lower desert, lower Four Corners region, even in here into Colorado, and then another system moving in, going to bring some rain up into the to the Pacific Northwest and along Florida too. You can see some rain. That front begins to finally move off as we get on into Sunday, so probably as we get on in toward the afternoon hours on Sunday, things will be clearing out the way it looks today, and then that extends back up into the Four Corners region too. So South Texas could see some rain with that tropical moisture, and more rain moving into the Pacific Northwest as well. Temperature wise, folks, boy, it's going to be a roller coaster for some of us. Already cool for highs this afternoon up here, 40s, even 50s showing up across much of the north, 60s, and down to 90s across much of the south, with hundreds showing up in Texas, the desert Southwest, up into the Pacific Northwest. Tomorrow, much the same story, except a bigger push of that cool air. We've got 60s all the way into the central plains, 70s up in the northeast, and 90s along the south, hundreds in Texas, hot in the desert Southwest and the Pacific Northwest. Same again on Saturday, and then Sunday, starting to see much of the nation cool off, finally getting some relief up here in the Northwest and down in Texas as well. 70s in my neck of the woods here in Raleigh, used to live in Raleigh, now I live in Morganton. Gotta figure out where I live, folks. There it is, set 30s for lows over the course of the morning hours, and then we get on into tomorrow, Friday, looking at low temperatures. Sorry, that was Friday. This is Saturday. Low temperatures widespread in the 30s and 40s. Like I said, we'll probably see some areas get close to freezing. Definitely going to see some frost advisories, 50s and 60s and 70s as you head on farther south. And then as we look at one more morning, lows widespread in the 30s across the north, 40s, and it's going to feel like fall when you walk out the door. Cool, crisp morning up north. Warm and muggy down south. So this is that time of year we start to see those boundaries set up. Looking at record temperatures, folks, we could set a couple of record highs. Let me get on the right display here. Sorry about that. Record highs this afternoon up in Washington, and record lows prevalent potentially as we get on into Saturday morning. There are your record low temperatures that are going to be threatened all up and through the Midwest, back into the northern plains, folks. And here's your 6 to 10 day forecast from the WPC. Highest probabilities below normal out east, highest probabilities for above normal through the central plains, and then below in the southwest as well, mixed in Alaska, above in Hawaii. Precipitation looks to be much above in the 6 to 10 day as that new system works in, brings a lot of moisture with it, below the Great Lakes, back through the southern tier of the country, and then above off the southeast coast where that frontal boundary will be slow to push through, okay, above in Alaska and Hawaii as well. That's your forecast for the end of the week, folks. Got a lot of weather, a lot of things changing and moving around. Certainly some severe weather going to be possible, but also some frost and freezing possible as well. So that's what we got to look forward to the next couple of days. We're going to wrap things up with space weather and talk about that big disaster that occurred a long time ago. Not a lot happening with space weather since that CME a couple of days ago, but we do have a coronal hole turning toward us now at center disk, and portion of that transcends the equator. And so we're going to watch the solar wind over the next couple of days. Could see minor geomagnetic storm conditions come out of that. Not much going on in the sunspot map, so I'm not going to show that, but we do have a little bit of an earthquake swarm here resuming in Nevada after a day or so of being kind of quiet. Got some earthquakes not shown on the map up here in the Aleutians, continuing in the Kodiak region, but not sure what's going on here in Nevada. I don't know if that pretends anything or not, but we're going to keep an eye on it because that's what I do here, folks. I keep an eye on all of it. All the weather here at Cold Rain's Weather World. 87.9% waxing gibbous. That includes the moon, and we're going to a full moon in 3 days. September the 7th, it'll be a corn moon and a blood moon, and if you're in a part of the world that can see it, it'll be something to see. Over in Asia and maybe parts of Africa, you'll be able to see it, but in the Americas, folks, I'm afraid we're not going to be able to see that. And that brings us all the way back to almost where we started with the answer to today's IQ question. Okay, we talked about isobars, we talked about isotax, now it's iso something. What is the answer to the question? Here's the question. What is the term for the lines which connect points of equal temperature on a weather map? Isohypses, isometrics, isotoners, or isotherms? Well, if the isotherms are very chill, connecting points of very chilly temperatures, you might want to wear isotoners, gloves. But the correct answer, of course, is isotherms, connecting points of equal temperature on a map. Okay, there you have it, folks. And that leads us into the last part of the show, which I wanted to talk briefly about, and that is the disaster that was the 1900 Galveston Hurricane. On the morning of September the 4th, 1900, Isaac Klein, who was the Weather Bureau representative, the U.S. Weather Bureau, by the way, was the precursor to the National Weather Service. He was the Weather Bureau representative in Galveston, Texas. He walked from his office down to the beach, which was along the Gulf Coast. He looked out over the horizon, saw some clouds way out there, and looked and saw an eerie calmness to the water, including some little waves kind of lapping up rather fast along the beach. He was a little bit concerned because he had heard reports that a big storm had entered the Caribbean and was on its way to the Gulf. However, the U.S. Weather Bureau assured him that it would turn and head up the East Coast. The Cuban Weather Service, who the U.S. Weather Service didn't trust at all, didn't connect with information they should have, said that it had entered the Gulf. Well, no warning came, and the next morning, Galveston was completely destroyed by a Category 4 storm with max sustained winds estimated at around 130 to 140 miles per hour with higher gusts and a 15-foot storm surge that completely wiped out the city. Galveston was the largest city in Houston at the time. It was competing with Houston for who would be the best or the most prominent port going forward. Well, Galveston was only about 8 feet high, I believe, at its apex, and the storm surge completely destroyed the city, killing 6 to as many as 12,000 people. A lot of bodies were never found. Others were burned in funeral pyres throughout the town as they rebuilt over the next several years. They eventually elevated the land and built a seawall, which they should have done before, which they didn't because they didn't think it could ever be destroyed in the way it was. One of the best books I've ever read on this event was written by Eric Larson called Isaac's Storm. It's incredibly good. You should read it if you like this kind of stuff at all, but it was the worst natural disaster in U.S. history. A couple of other things to note as well. Back in 1998, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, two PhD students at Stanford University, formally founded the search engine company called Google, another transformative event in our history. And lastly, on this day in 1781, a group of 44 Spanish settlers known as Los Pobladores founded the city of El Pueblo de Nuestra Señora La Reina de los Angeles. The village of, I'm not saying that right, but you understand. The village of Our Lady, the Queen of the Angels in present-day California. That would be Los Angeles, was founded back in 1781. I got most of those words right, I think. In any event, that's what happened today in history, folks. Now you know the weather, now you know history. And I hope you've enjoyed the show. As always, this is Cold Rain reminding you the weather runs 24/7, but I got you covered right here, right now, 4814. Take care. Have a great day, everybody.